Well, as you know, Mr Harcher is no longer the Minister for Energy. And you have to ask what kind of show we're running here. A staff member approaches a businessman asking for a donation to the Liberal Party on the Central Coast of apparently $5,000, pretty basic, normal stuff. The money allegedly goes into a slush fund. The people are on Harcher's staff, and Harcher is out of the ministry and gone. I don't approve of this whole HICAC stuff. Mr Harcher is entitled to know what he's been charged with. And if they can't level charges, then he's entitled to keep his job on that basis. $5,000. Piddling stuff compared to the billions of dollars that we're dealing with in projects that the same Mr Harcher has given the green light to, which affect people's health, their well-being, their future, their happiness, their community, their land, their value, the lot. No, that's not a problem. That doesn't incur a penalty. Harcher made a speech in the Parliament in 2005 in opposition. It was a magnificent speech. He warned New South Wales of the dangers of coal seam gas. He cited international experiences. He talked about his own area in the Duralong Valley. He talked about water. He talked about people's right to know the science, all of those things. In government, he has said and done the opposite. So he was lying to the Parliament on at least one occasion. That doesn't incur a sanction. Yesterday I spoke to Michael West from the Sydney Morning Herald, thank God for him. He talked about the fact that one of the big myths is that we're short of gas, when we're not. More importantly, Michael West said, meanwhile the gas producers, he said, not me, aggressively push for coal seam gas to be expedited before the science and the prospective environmental damage have been properly thought through. Harcher approved all of this. No one in government blinked an eyelid. No ICAC about that. What the hell are our priorities? AGL actually is advertising they are planning in the Gloucester Basin to hydraulically fracture 4 coal seam gas wells, and they use these words, quote, before the completion of further water studies. Michael West, remember, said it might be an idea to rename the EPA the BPA. This minor change from the Environmental Protection Authority, he said, to the Backside Protection Authority would enshrine more precisely the agency's central priorities. Now, the Backside Protection Authority was the author of a report, as we told you yesterday, as was the Office of Water, about the risks to the Gloucester Basin. But as Michael West said, they were steamrolled by the Office of Coal Seam Gas. Michael West, not Alan Jones, said, and this bloke's a very smart young fellow, writing for the Sydney Morning Herald, when it comes to coal seam gas, proper process and accountability are elusive at best. This is on Harcher's patch. No ICAC about that. No raiding of Harcher's office about any of that stuff. Michael West said, as for the Backside Protection Authority, first it ensures a secret report with its real view on Gloucester finally sees the light of day, but then dodges questions about it and accuses your humble scribe, Michael West, of being grouchy on the phone and hangs up. So Harcher and the O'Farrell government sidelined the Environment Protection Authority in pushing ahead at Gloucester, despite advice that what they were doing with coal seam gas was high risk and threatening valuable agricultural land. An EPA report. Well, let's leave that for a moment. You've heard me on this program with any number of authoritative people on the damage of wind farms, wind turbines. Who has ignored all of that evidence? Same man, Harcher. No ICAC knock on your door about any of that. People weeping and writing to me, you've heard them on the program, begging letters. What is going to happen to us as government ignores what we're suffering as a result of these wind farms? There was a public meeting recently, to take one example, at Collector on the way to Canberra. A 63 wind turbine farm. The public in total opposition. A detailed report from the New South Wales Planning Assessment Commission full of mistakes. But no one to peer review it, no one to assess it, no capacity within Harcher's department to say whether what they're saying is right or wrong. Are these Australian companies? No, they're not. The point is the public met and expressed vehement opposition to this because they'd heard and read the health consequences of these wind farms. Apart from the fact that the bit of energy they provide is expensive and it's going into the grid and jacks up your electricity price, and apart from the fact that it will never ever provide a viable replacement alternative to coal-fired power. But then one report, commissioned by a farmer, found that these wind turbines result in a 60% reduction in rural property values. Many of these properties are these people's superannuation. But as has been demonstrated, if you're going to prop up the likely failure of your energy needs relying on wind power, that also could cost the taxpayer billions of dollars. One academic report says this: on the Eastern Australian grid, it is not possible for wind energy ever to displace dispatchable, reliable, generation supplying baseload demand. In that regard, the proposal by some Australian policymakers to replace major coal-fired power stations with a fleet of wind farms is not technically achievable. The paper called it a dangerous strategy. The Friends of Collector talked about this. They were talking about the health consequences. And the O'Farrell government, Harcher, he's now gone, 63 turbines, forget the people, forget their views, forget the science, approve the wind turbines. Why is it that these mining companies and wind turbine companies have just a complete hold over government? No ICAC looking at any of this. And this mongrel mob, the Planning Assessment Commission, there's a report of the Flyers Creek. Flyers Creek is south of Orange. And we learned today that the Department of Planning Infrastructure is preparing their planning assessment report, 43 wind turbines, and then once the planning assessment report is completed, it's forwarded to the Planning Assessment Commission for a final determination. Not the minister, not the government. These unelected people. All this on Harcher's watch. No knock on the door about any of that. Barry O'Farrell said he'd return power to local government. Well, this mob at Collector, it's owned by a Thai company. A Thai power generating company. The local people at Collector are 99.9% opposed. Then you've got the Gullen Range wind farm, currently being constructed, approved by Harcher, 20 kilometres west of Goulburn. 73 wind turbines were given approval by Harcher in 2010. No one knocked on the door then. And it'll begin operating next year. Who runs it? Oh, sorry, of course, a Chinese company called Gold Wind. Then you've got the Bodengora wind farm, which was approved by the O'Farrell government, Harcher, in August last year. None of this went to ICAC. 40 turbines, run by an outfit called Infigen Energy, which used to be Babcock and Brown. 4 major wind farms proposed around Mudgee and Wellington. If these things were so safe, why wouldn't you put them on Bondi Beach? Or down Parramatta Road? They want to build 250 turbines at Ungula, some as high as 194 metres with a blade length of 65 metres. Who own it? Ratch Australia, a Thai outfit. Then in Queensland, the Atherton Tableland. You go wherever you like, this is going on. How do these people have this hold over government? This is all part of this global warming hoax legacy. John Hegarty, a Sydney lawyer, wrote to the Planning Assessment Commission on behalf of the Friends of Collector. Meaningless. Forget it. Forget it, you're wasting the ink. This mob on the Planning Assessment Commission are appointed by the minister. They do his bidding. I don't know what planning knowledge they have, let alone anything about coal seam gas, but they're all there, and they bear no relationship to the problems that people face. I've had letter after letter after letter, awfully disturbing, from people living within 2 kilometres of industrial wind turbines, dreadful sleep, dreadful symptoms, but they ignore Harcher International Research. Does ICAC worry about any of that? No. He loses his job when they can't even explain what he did wrong, and here are billions of dollars of projects damaging our future for agricultural land, our health, our water, the lot. Julia Gillard was in government, hopeless, commissioned an expert panel to investigate electricity price increases. There was a British academic, former New South Wales Treasurer Michael Egan, a former chair of the Australian Energy Market Commission, and they found that taxpayer-funded subsidies for green schemes, renewable energy targets, that's wind turbines, risked wasting resources, their words, on a grand scale. And the report said that supervision of these green schemes, wind turbines, is chaotic, that scrutiny was virtually non-existent, in other words, your money was completely wasted, and the expert panel found that the scrutiny of public environmental spending and subsidies, our money, quote, is undeveloped, with consequent risk of waste of resources on a grand scale. An expert panel commissioned by Gillard and ignored. We have brown coal reserves that would last us 539 years, and black coal reserves which would last us 111 years. And we peddle all these green schemes, sabotage and destroy one of our nation's greatest competitive advantages, cheap energy, and now people all over the country writing to me everywhere, pleading for someone to understand that their health is suffering from these wind turbines. And statements are made in the Victorian Parliament about it, and nothing is done. Did Harcher listen? Does O'Farrell listen? Does Brad Hazzard listen? 40 of them near Wellington, 73 west of Goulburn, 63 at Collector. Who amongst these people has a voice? No one. As one correspondent said to me, each of the corrupt, inept, and fraudulent departments of health, planning and noise pollution regulation are using the opinions of the others, that is, each one using the other's opinion to continue to ignore the evidence. The person wrote to me and said there will be either civil disobedience, damage to property, suicides or worse as a result of people's basic human rights being ignored in this way. People are going to take this forever. Who has the money, though, to take these people to the Supreme Court? Who has the money to get an injunction? How can these so-called public servants continue to get away with this? How much blunter do you have to get? I've spoken to Dr. Alan Watts, HDA, BSc, MB, CHB, LRCP, MRCS, credentialed beyond what you'd ever imagine, has talked about the fraud of wind turbines. He was awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia in 2004 for services to medicine. He's a member of the Royal College of Surgeons. He's obviously a liar, a professional liar as well, because everything he said has been totally ignored. He's a licentiate of the Royal College of Physicians. He wrote last year, the wind industry is based on greed, ignorance, subsidy, and institutional deceit. Its propaganda rewards the greedy, flatters the gullible, and exploits the well-intentioned. He wrote, they, the wind industry, plunder our environment while enriching foreigners, all under the guise of some mythical societal benefit. They take our health, our land, our peace of mind, and our taxes. We surrender our precious mountains to this most gross industry, and in return they give us social chaos, environmental destruction, lies, deceit, scorn, and ill health. He said industrial wind is a fraud of enormous consequence, and people who value intellectual honesty should not allow themselves to be cruelly deceived by such industrial treachery or even by their government's callous indifference. No ICAC inquiries into any of this. In a letter to the editor of the Australian newspaper last year, Dr. Watts wrote of the wind industry, it represents not only poor science and wasteful economics, but is ignorant, in defiance of truth, and indifferent to the welfare of Australian rural families. Dr. Alan Watts is on the line. Alan Watts, good morning.
Good morning, Alan. How are you?
Well, I'm okay, but you must be either a professional liar or you don't have any clout whatever, because no one takes any notice of what you've said.
Well, I am feeling a bit unloved. There's no doubt about it.
But it's got worse and worse.
It has. I would like to be able to come to you today, having spoken to you before on this topic, and say, well, this has improved, we're making traction here, and so on. And it's one step forward and it's two steps backwards always. You're absolutely right. I mean, the fundamentals here have to be understood, and that is there are some aspects of society which are absolutely sacrosanct. They are not for sale. And that's the integrity of man, the safety of society, and the health of society. Therefore, the primary government responsibility has to be one for safe food, clean water, and a nation's health. And that's absolutely here being ignored. If it wasn't so serious, I mean, it would be laughable to the extent that the fraud which is currently being perpetrated on the Australian taxpayer, it's just beyond belief. I mean, I'm left speechless on occasions that this fraud is of such proportions. We're talking $80 billion by the time we talk about renewables and infrastructure repairs and maintenance.
Absolutely. It's 7:30, by the way. I'll continue with Dr. Alan Watts, a distinguished medical practitioner. You've said over and over again the medical profession has a responsibility to speak out about the effects of the turbines, particularly in relation to the production of low-frequency infrasound. But people are writing to me talking of sleep deprivation, ill health, and no one cares.
It's exactly right. It's exactly right. The medical profession have a responsibility. They've only got to look at the evidence. We've got people all around the world now, like Alex Salt, Nisselbaum, Hanning, Shepherd, Mollem, Peterson, Schellmer, all these people, Pierpont, all these people are talking about infrasound causing sleep deprivation and significant health effects.
A judge in the United States in the last week ruled that 2 wind turbines, Falmouth, caused, quote, irreparable physical and psychological harm to the health of neighbours. He ordered the turbines be immediately turned off. His words, a judge at Falmouth in the United States, Falmouth. It's there available for Farrells of this world to read if they care. Irreparable physical and psychological harm to the health of neighbours.
Yep. Now, we knew that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We knew that 2 years ago because we had the research. But we've had Public Health, New South Wales Public Health, criticise that decision, and they're now criticising the legal decisions by saying, we don't listen to court decisions. What they failed to realise, because they're so stupid...
What is their agenda?
Their agenda is that they're not going to listen because they believe they are saving the planet.
Because under Labor they'd made the decisions and they're not going to be told that they were wrong.
Correct. And they've put themselves in a position. They've now in a corner, they've painted themselves green, and there's no way out. And so we have people like Wayne Smith and McNulty and Kerry Chant from New South Wales Health. They trot out this rubbish time and time again. They quote the National Health and Medical Research Council rapid review document, which should have been the O2 rapid review document. It came out in June 2010. It's a lousy, flimsy, careless document, and yet it's endlessly quoted.
Quite.
It's not peer-reviewed. It's not published.
Well, let's just take this bloke, Wayne Smith. This bloke who's the director of the Environmental Health Branch at New South Wales Health, the conjoint professor of epidemiology at Newcastle University, honorary professor of public health at the University of Sydney, a member of the expert reference group on wind farms and human health at the National Health and Medical Research Council, has told the Planning Assessment Commission about Bodangora here in New South Wales there is no, quote, peer-reviewed public evidence. That is a lie.
That's rubbish. That's absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. If your listeners just wish to go and Google infrasound and wind turbines, they will be swamped.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean swamped.
I mean, evidence in Canada, the adverse health effects of industrial wind turbines were tested in a court case in Canada in 2011 during the Ontario Environmental Tribunal hearing, and it confirmed wind turbines harm human health. As you say, there are references everywhere.
Everywhere. And are these people all wrong? I mean,
they identified the symptoms in Ontario: sleep disturbance, headache, tinnitus, ear pressure, dizziness, vertigo, nausea, visual blurring, irritability, problems with concentration, memory, panic episodes associated with sensations of internal pulsation or quivering when awake or asleep. Not my words, the court's words.
Has the court got it wrong? Is Wayne Smith now saying the court got it wrong? Are all these international authorities... eminent men.
But how does Barry O'Farrell allow Wayne Smith and these people to stay in jobs?
Well,
I don't understand. A British acustician, G. Leventhal, who appeared as an expert witness for the wind industry in Ontario, said, I'm happy to accept these symptoms, as they've been known to me for many years, as the symptoms of extreme psychological stress from environmental noise, particularly low-frequency noise.
And hasn't that man backpedaled at such
That's
speed...
right.
to try and distance himself from that statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting back to the state government,
Yes.
because that's the people who are making some of these decisions.
Yes.
I mean, this state government is so bad. Truly, Alan, Michael Gallagher, the police minister, should issue arrest orders on Barry O'Farrell for loitering, Brad Hazzard for vagrancy, and Chris Harcher for public nuisance. Their behaviour here is a disgrace. And at the forefront of the decision-making process, they lean back on stupid New South Wales Health, who are totally ignoring all of the evidence that are around the world. It's just staggering. I cannot believe such ignorance is institutionalised to this extent.
And here ICAC now raid his offices over a couple of bob given to promote candidates, and this stuff is investigated by nobody in government. This is a betrayal of people, and there are billions of dollars, and public health is involved.
Of course, bypassed. Absolutely bypassed. You remember that we complained about noise at Capital, Cullerin Range and Woodlawn.
Yep.
We found that they were exceeding their terms of consent. In other words, they were operating illegally. So an audit was called by Hazzard. Now, that was called for and available and shown to the wind industry in October 2012. It hasn't been released to the public. You have to say why. The New South Wales planning guidelines, we've spoke about this before, they call for public comment in December 2011. Submission closed in March 2012. Notice how everything occurs over Christmas.
Yep.
Now, that was due for release in August 2012. It was shown to the wind industry last October. We haven't seen it.
Never seen the light of day. Well, I talked yesterday about the Environmental Protection Authority report into the Gloucester Basin over these irrigation trials and AGL conducting them, and even the Environmental Protection Authority said, stop, this can't be done, this is high risk to water, to farming land and whatever. The report is shelved and locked away and not released.
It goes back to what I said. Government primary responsibility has to be for safe food, clean water and the health of a nation. When you walk away from that responsibility, when you totally disregard your duty of care and your code of conduct, what hope do you have? What hope do you have as a man in the street trying to struggle through life and raise kids and do a decent day's work for a decent day's pay, teach your children some of the merits of being honest, and you see this sort of dishonesty surrounding you at every turn? I mean, what sort of a message is that for Australians?
And this is the Harcher legacy.
Yep, absolutely.
We'll keep talking. I'm really grateful for your scholarship and your time.
Alan, as usual, it's good to speak to you, and we thank you again for keeping this before the public.
Thank you so much. Dr. Alan Watts.